Welcome to Radio Row here at Super Bowl 59 at the New Orleans Convention Center. This is day 2 of Saints Insider podcast coverage live on Radio Row. I'm Zach Ewing, and joined already this morning by a couple of guests. One, you know well, Saints Insider viewers know, Luke Johnson. Those of you who read the Times-Picayune and have for a while, and The Advocate, may recognize our other guest. That's Brooks Cuvina, who is now the Eagles beat writer for The Athletic. So we've got a full house this morning for the first 20 minutes or so. Gentlemen, how has the week been so far for you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Last night was a spectacle for sure.
As usual, yeah.
You know, it's not just that it was like a lot of, kind of weird people out there. There was a genie out there last night at media night. That stuff typically happens. But it was also just a ton of people in kind of a small space. It kind of roped us off into just the sideline areas of the Superdome, and I don't know, it's pretty packed. What did you think, Brooks?
You saw a genie. I saw a guy that had a baby doll strapped to his chest, and I was like, so. And I heard him talk to somebody else like, oh, he had a name for it or whatever. I was like, what happened? He's like, he lost some pick'em bet with his crew. I don't know if I'd ever sign up to do that as a person in working around here.
Right.
I don't know. Last night was insane. Covering LSU in the national championship. Has it been 5 years ago?
5 years ago, before COVID.
Yeah. I mean, that was all in Baton Rouge, so they never had anything like this that came in like the day before. So this is insane. So it's really interesting so far.
There was also a guy dressed as Andy Reid interviewing Andy Reid. It's quite meta.
I was talking to somebody who was kind of annoyed at the circus of it all, but the truth of the matter is the NFL wants that at its media night. I mean, they give out credentials for that. The credentials for the game are a different story. Those are hard to get.
Yeah.
Credentials for media night are very easy to get, and they want these
don't let that secret out.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll become harder if I say that. But I mean, they want people cutting up, and Jameis asking everybody their favorite color, and people asking boxers or briefs, and like all this kind of stuff.
Zach Baum was asked 3 times last night about who won the Lakers and Mavericks trade.
See,
props to him for answering each one of those questions the exact same way.
I will say,
what was his answer each way?
Lakers, and to the why, he said Luka is a dog, and that was it.
Would it have been better if he had changed his answer each time?
I mean, I would have found that fascinating.
That
it's just like a character study, but
these guys are amazingly patient. They got to sit up there for an hour and just take question after question. We have some clips of that we're going to show you later this morning, but we only have a few minutes with these guys, so let's talk ball. Brooks, this Eagles season started in Brazil. The regular season did. 4 or 5 months ago now. What were your expectations coming into the season for this team? It's your first full year with the team. They obviously had a terrible finish to last year. What were your expectations? What were the expectations in the building?
Going into this season, you knew it was a roster that could reach the Super Bowl. They had a killer offseason. They signed Saquon Barkley. They re-signed all their guys like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, their Pro Bowl-studded offensive line. And the question was really, how would it be managed? Because that's really what led to the downfall of last year. That was a team that had Super Bowl expectations, were really the number 1 seed 12 weeks into the season, and then, boom, 1-6 to end the year, and they're bounced in the wild card round. Philadelphia fans in the city were calling for Nick Sirianni's head as a head coach who let that happen. And he overhauled his staff, got a new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, who's now up for the Saints job. And then Vic Fangio takes over the defense. And really going into the season, you're like, okay, this is a team that could – I picked them to have 12 wins in the year because I thought the roster was there. But the question was, would this be managed the right way? What does the offensive game plan look like? Does the defense work under the system that the Eagles have preferred for a long time, but now is under the guy who invented it? So once that started off, they were 2-2 through the first 4 weeks. That Sao Paulo game, although they won against the Green Bay Packers, they ran all over them. It was a close game. Jalen Hurts had a couple turnovers, one as a throwing and another as a fumble. It looked discombobulated through 4 weeks. So at that point, I was wondering if it would be sustainable throughout the year. So that was the expectation going in. And even now that they're in the Super Bowl, it's kind of hard to reflect that there was actually a bit of a rocky start at the beginning of the season.
And actually, they were 1-1, Luke, and came to New Orleans to face the 2-0 Saints, and were losing with a minute to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember going into the season thinking like there were some weird vibes in Philly and like it had a chance to really go off the rails. And then I remember going into that game, I was like, I think the Saints are going to kill them. And
Remember when the Saints
at that time they were scoring about 40 points a game?
Yeah, feels laughable now. And the first 2 weeks of the season, you got to like, I think the Eagles were giving up like 190 rushing yards a game, and I was like, oh, the Saints are running the ball great. And then they go into that. And Fangio's bear fronts just completely shut them down, and then you're like, oh, okay, maybe the Saints aren't that good. Maybe the Eagles are good. Saquon, that was the game he ripped off the 60-yard touchdown to put them ahead, and then Dallas Goedert did what tight ends kind of frequently do to the Saints, just catch a 5-yard crosser and run for 60 yards.
What's interesting in that game, things that were so small that changed over that time. So Zach Bond, everybody can remember how he played for the Saints as an edge rusher, moves to inside linebacker, now up for Defensive Player of the Year. In that first game against the Packers, they ran down the Eagles' throats, and I went up to Zach Bond after just to ask what happened, and he said cut blocks for him personally. And I went back and I looked on the film. I was like, yeah, he's getting cut the hell out of. Like he's not able to handle this. And I remember going into the game against the Saints because their run game was so good. And I asked him through that, I was like, have you never dealt with cut blocks? He's like, I've been cut before, but not like an inside linebacker. And watching the Saints film, they tried to cut him, but he learned. And talking to Vic Fangio after the word, he's like, yeah, people were trying to go at him, and now he learned, and we move on. Something as simple as that.
Yeah.
A player transitioning into a position he never played before, taking something that was relatively pretty straightforward for an inside linebacker, learning it, and then getting through it. Obviously, there's a lot of other things schematically that worked in that game, but Bond was a big part of that, and just growing up in the position that he was playing. There was so many things with the Eagles throughout this year. Young guys like Quinyon Mitchell on the outside at corner, rookie. Cooper DeJean was he's been excellent at nickel for them. He wasn't even playing and starting at that point in those first 4 weeks because he missed 11 training practices because of an off-season injury. So this was a team that grew up in a lot of ways at that point.
And Howie Roseman's done a phenomenal job building that team in a couple of instances at the Saints' expense. This is a really good team that is now in the Super Bowl. But if this were like Mega Man, now you're facing the ultimate boss, right? The Kansas City Chiefs, who Luke is the pool reporter for the Kansas City Chiefs this week, and so he'll be following the Chiefs closely. And I mean, I am struck by I feel like in the past, if a team were going for a three-peat, it would be a lot of, no, we're focusing one day at a time and one game at a time. They are embracing this three-peat thing. I mean, they know that it's history, and they enjoy that, it seems.
Yeah. Justin Reed threw out the Mount Rushmore thing yesterday, Mount Rushmore of sports teams, like they're really about it. And I think for them, it's, some of these guys, this is their fifth Super Bowl in the last 6 seasons, right? Did I got that right?
That's right. Yeah,
5th in the last 6.
Insane.
And the other one they lost in the AFC Championship game to the Cincinnati Bengals. So, I mean, I think that long experience with it, makes them go like, yeah, well, why would we treat this like we could never go back because we've been back here so many times? Let's go for the big one. Let's talk about it. Let's embrace it. I think it's really fascinating. It's a different sort of way to go about it. I think probably a lot of that comes from the head coach. I think Andy Reid strikes me as somebody who doesn't tell his players to. He doesn't do the Dennis Allen thing and just focus on the right now, right here and now. Right. He's okay. Let him think about the big picture.
He wears Hawaiian shirts on national TV.
He sure
comfortable
does.
in his own skin.
Yeah. He did answer a lot of questions about cheeseburgers last night.
As he should.
He should never have let that out of the bag that he loves cheeseburgers because that's all anybody. I wanted to ask him about cheeseburgers.
It's made him a lot of money from Wendy's, I bet. On the Eagles side, obviously they were the first victim in this run of what could be 3 in a row for the Chiefs. They don't want to be the last one like that. That's an emphasis for them. I mean, they see this as a redemption.
They don't say it that way, but I'm sure they think it that way. Throughout this year, I mean, there are a lot of players that didn't play in that game. This is a defense that was overhauled in a lot of ways. Rookies that obviously watched that game in college and such. But when you think about players that experienced that game, I think about Jordan Mailata, the left tackle for the Eagles. On a story I wrote from earlier, we were talking about not the Super Bowl directly, more about his relationship with some of his teammates. Lane Johnson, the right tackle, they were together in the locker room after losing in that game in the final minutes. And he told me that Lane Johnson was helping him experience the grief of losing that. There was a fridge in that locker room that Mailata was just punching the hell out of. And I'm sure it doesn't work anymore. But that grief that they experienced after that, Nick Sirianni talked about looking down on his shirt, coming out and seeing flecks of red and yellow confetti, and how that realization that you lost and how it's sticking to you, like, couldn't be any more of a metaphor. And Jalen Hurts remembers standing in all of that. I think the pain of that is still there, but it's not something they think about. You don't need to call to mind any of that to go through that. And it's a team that last year experienced the downfall of the end of the year. So there's been the guys that have been through the last 3 years have dealt with a lot of ways to try and get back to this game. So they know what it takes to win, because they experienced being so close. But beyond that, I think it's what's interesting about this team is that they've really spoken up as a team, as players, to understand who they are as an offense. They're whenever Saquon Barkley comes into the building, and I asked Howie Roseman on Saturday whether that was the single most influential acquisition of his career, and I don't think he wanted to hurt anybody's feelings, but I think it's true. A guy that was not a part of the game 2 years ago walks in immediately, and Lane Johnson said it usually takes time for guys to actually not only have a voice but be heard. He did that right away, and they've leaned into him so heavily. They're running the ball more times per game than any Eagles team since 1978, and it would be 1951 were it not for Week 18 when their third stringer started chucking the ball in a meaningless game. And Saquon Barkley, I've written several times that he's history incarnate, understands his place in history and what he's doing in real time. And he wasn't a part of that. He understands that the Super Bowl is his expectation. Jalen Hurts has that same expectation. All their bars are extremely high. So it's not losing the Super Bowl and wanting vengeance. That's what they've wanted all their lives.
Right.
And they have another moment to do that.
And Saquon Barkley, like, whatever you expected, the Eagles got Saquon Barkley, it's going to be good. This has been exceeded whatever we thought the ceiling was. I mean, he's been incredible. It's
another instance where you knew it was going to be great, but you couldn't have pegged record-setting run for 2 60-plus yard touchdowns against the Rams in the snow. Like, you couldn't – watching the guy spin out of a tackle and leapfrog a guy backwards against the Jaguars, all these things, you're like, okay, this is going to work out. But to see it in front of you, it's insane. It makes writing very easy. I'm like, I guess I'll write about Saquon Barkley today.
So, some family come in from London, and they have an 11-year-old son who was here for 2 weeks, had never seen an NFL game in his life, and now loves Saquon Barkley. So that's the impact he's had.
It's incredible. One of the things going into you can't tell the story of this season without pointing to Week 5. They had a bye week, and they were turning the ball over a lot. They were trying to do too much, and Lane Johnson and Landon Dickerson, the left guard, they were kind of speaking up to Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni, saying, "We have Saquon Barkley. We need to run the ball like more. We need to do more. Give this guy the ball." And they ran off and only lost one more time the rest of the season. And I think it's interesting with Saquon because after he jumped over that guy backwards against the Jaguars, I went to his locker and I'm like, all right, man. So that took a split second, which meant in the synapses of your brain, jump was an option, like to do. Like why and how is that possible? And the funny thing is that he actually, in training camp, had a conversation with Keely Ringo, a backup corner, saying, I think I can do that. And they're like, you can't do that. He prepares so much in his mind, scenarios and instances that really only he could do. And what's interesting about him, and Howie Roseman said this Saturday, the player is as good as the person, and I'm not diminishing the player at all. Because, like, his gratitude for his body and his ability and the respect he has to do the most out of that, enters every level of his preparation thinking, okay, I think there's an instance that I can spin out of a guy and jump over him, and I'm going to try that. And that's going to be an option, and do it. And then after it's over, not be surprised that it actually happened. It's crazy. I know, I don't know, but the indications are that he's not going to win MVP. Considering how they've built this offense around him and that they're here because of him, he should be MVP.
And Luke, I think the NFL is kind of going this way. It's going back towards running backs getting some value again because defenses have been built to defend sideline to sideline passing games.
You knew that was going to happen.
It's a cycle, and we always think it's not going to happen, but if you're smart, you do.
Right. And I'll be curious to see how like the running back like actual like value market plays out.
Talking like actual dollars.
Because Saquon's making like he signed like the same deal essentially that like Darnell Mooney signed. And Darnell Mooney's a nice player, not Saquon Barkley. So I'm curious to see if more teams are like, okay, well, Saquon's going to be good into like his early 30s. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Saquon plays behind a ridiculous offensive line.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 elite receivers on the outside and a very good tight end. Like they just have insane players throughout their offense, which like if you drop Saquon Barkley into the Giants, where he sometimes struggled, did some superhuman things, sometimes struggled, or into the Saints, it's not the same player. So like I'm curious to see how teams start to value that. Like Alvin Kamara was dropped into a better situation this year with the Saints and looked like a much better version of the player than he was for the last 3-4 years. So I think situation matters a lot with running backs, but I think taking that into consideration, the player is still really important.
We're not for the offensive line with the Eagles. I don't think Barkley is an Eagle. Right. It was one of the main reasons he chose. He said that when he first got there. And you look at the average yards before contact with the Eagles, it's way above the average. It may be number one. The last time I checked, it was insanely high.
Yeah,
the Giants,
they've got what, four guys on their offensive line, on their current starting offensive line who've made a Pro Bowl, and 2 who are all pros. Yeah. Right. Jurgens, Dickerson, Mailata, and Lane Johnson.
Because he was choosing between the Texans and the Giants, and the Texans, their offensive line has been dreadful.
Yeah.
So he was not going to have that kind of season with them for sure. So it is interesting. You think about a team thinking, 1, is the running back I have Saquon Barkley level, and 2, are the pieces around them something that can actually field that. And Jalen Hurts, I don't think gets enough credit for how he helps out Saquon Barkley, because the zone read game is a huge element of the rushing attack.
Got to account for Hurts as well.
Barkley, a lot of the yards that he picks up in games come from zone reads. Jalen Hurts ran for a 44-yard touchdown against the Rams in the divisional round. Like, that is another element why that's so successful.
Watching the Saints Insider podcast live from Radio Row at Super Bowl 59. We're brought to you by Ochsner Health. I'm Zach Ewing. We're talking with Luke Johnson, Brooks Kubina. Only a couple more minutes with these guys.
So you got to ask Brooks the question everybody who's tuning in wants to know.
Okay.
What are the Saints potentially getting in Kellen Moore?
That's right where I was going. Yeah.
Okay. I should have trusted
I was going to say we were talking Vic Fangio and the new coordinator on the defensive side. How about the new coordinator on the offensive side who may be headed to New Orleans?
So he did not come into an easy situation. When Nick Sirianni fired Brian Johnson, that was something that was very significant in a lot of ways, because Sirianni is a very loyal coach to his coaching staff. That comes from how he worked with Frank Reich and with the Colts. And Nick Sirianni doesn't call plays, but he last year was very involved in the game plan week to week. Too much. Had his hands on the wheel way too much. And Brian Johnson was caught in the middle of a dysfunctional system, and things needed to be changed. And he was the one that ended up getting fired because they needed to change. And here comes Kellen Moore into a situation where Nick Sirianni, a year removed from a Super Bowl, thinks that they're doing a lot of things really well and is a bit resistant to ditch a lot of the things that got them there. So, Kellen Moore comes in. He has to work in a collaborative situation with a coach that's trying to maintain a lot of things that they're doing. So if you had ego, if you had a little bit of there was going to be pushback, and how do you handle pushback? That's one of the things that I think Kellen Moore did really well was working in a system like that. And because you look at the offense that they're running, this is not what Kellen Moore's history has been. Recognizing that you have Saquon Barkley, this offensive line, getting one-on-one to the outside with A.J. Brown, who may be the best one-on-one receiver there is in the NFL. Those are the things that are interesting about him. Whenever they played the Cowboys first, I did a story on Kellen Moore where I talked to basically every assistant coach that he worked with or played for with the Cowboys. And the number one thing that they said about him was, if he's a head coach, right, people always want to know how you lead. How do you connect with players? The way he does that is he comes to players and he says, he gets them involved. He's like, hey, what play do you want to run? What works for you? What do you want to do? And that kind of stems to his quarterbacking for Boise State. It's like, they're really fun to watch and they do trick plays and all that stuff. It's part of how they connect and get excited to play the game. That's why all of them are there. So you look at how this team adapted after the week 5 bye. That's partly Kellen Moore listening to the players and saying, what do you want to do? We want to run more with Barkley. We want to do the things that we do well. Okay, let's do that. A.J. Brown and I was just talking with Aaron Moorhead, the wide receiver coach of the Eagles last night. And we don't get to talk to assistant coaches all that much. And he was saying, on the sideline, they're running the ball more, so they're passing less. And you want to maintain a rhythm with wide receivers. And he'll go up to Kellen Moore on the sideline and say, hey, it's been a couple of drives since A.J. Brown's gotten a target. We want to get him the ball, at least to establish a rhythm. And also, you don't want him stewing on the sideline. So he fits that in the middle of a game, right, where you're trying to get yards and win and make the play. He's managing that at the same time. And he's done very well at that. So managing a situation that was going to be difficult for any coordinator that comes in, recognizing the talent that he has and using it really well, and getting to the point where this is his 3rd time as an offensive coordinator and building up all the time that he's had in different spots and getting to a Super Bowl. It's interesting because whatever team that he goes to, whether, Saints are likely at this point, the team's fired their coach for a reason. It's not going to be coming in and you don't have Saquon Barkley anymore. You don't have A.J. Brown. You don't have that situation. It's going to be a situation where he has to work with, if it's Mickey Loomis, what do I have and what are we working for? What's the expectation? And then connecting with those players and getting the most out of them. All those things are pretty, cliche whenever coaches say them, but you've seen that play out on the season for Kellen Moore. And another thing on that, and I know I'm going long on him, but I think an understated thing for what happened with the Eagles this year was how Jalen Hurts handled the blitz. In 2023, worst of his career. They were sacking him. They were forcing turnovers. The one thing that Kellen Moore said that he came on his first press conference was, I need to clean up. The best thing that we can have for an offense is a clean operation for the quarterback. Later, I talked to John Kitna, a former Cowboys quarterback, was a quarterback's coach with Kellen Moore. And he said, any quarterback going onto the field just doesn't want gray area. They don't want to go in and be like, whenever I see this guy in my face, I have, multiple options and what I'm supposed to do, and it's up to me. No, I want black, white. Where do I go with this? What do I do? And you see how they use Saquon Barkley against the blitz. They have outlets. They have checkdowns. Jalen Hurts is his best against the blitz this year. So, in a situation where this offensive line is probably not going to be as good, the quarterback and the receivers and all of that, that's going to be trouble. I think he's one of those coaches where you can say, okay, I think he's going to get the most out of the quarterback situation.
Look, I know we're up against you needing to get out of here, but this is, look, maybe last night's not the most important thing, but it was a tricky situation for Kellen Moore. I know you weren't standing next to him, but I'm sure you've seen some video and read some quotes. I thought he handled it well too. He kind of struck that balance between saying, hey, I'm the Eagles coach this week and we need to go win a Super Bowl, but also, yes, I aspire to be a head coach, and here's what I think about that.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously had time to prepare for that, and he knew what kind of questions he was going to get. But I do appreciate that. He didn't just go in there and just shut all of it down and be like, I'm here to focus on a Super Bowl, which would have been understandable but boring. Acknowledge what's going on. Everybody sees what's happening. Everybody sees the Saints are holding this job open, and everybody knows the reason they're holding it open is because they can't hire you until after the Super Bowl. So he didn't say he was taking the job, but I do think that handled nicely. I'll just put it that way.
He passed his first test, even if it was a smaller test.
Now, next test is feed me all the good scoops and and also some really interesting anecdotes for stories. Am I going to get that?
You might get one of those.
Kellen, if you're listening, it's a simple request, all right?
Just feed me, only me, all the scoops. Not even Matthew Paris or Jeff Duncan or Rod Walker. Just Luke Johnson. Please make my career.
All right. You are watching Saints Insider live at Radio Row at Super Bowl 59. Luke's got to go. I think Brooks has to go too. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more right after this.
Hey y'all, I'm Robin Barnes, the New Orleans Songbird, and we are here for the making of Super Bowl 59 at the beautiful Superdome. This will be the 11th Super Bowl in New Orleans. New Orleans is known for its vibrant culture, rich history, and amazing music, if I do say so myself. In this series, we're going to show you how the Super Bowl comes to life. This time, we're talking about NFL Source, a program that gives local underrepresented businesses the opportunity to gain exposure to event-based procurement knowledge, network with potential clientele, and compete for contracts related to Super Bowl 59. First, we'll talk to Maisha Boyce, lead for NFL Source, about the local economic impact of the program. Next, we'll talk to Chinsi Mouton, Director of Community Engagement at the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation and the Super Bowl 59 Host Committee, of how they work to form and foster these partnerships. Finally, we'll talk to Nicole Hutchison, owner of Mosswood Events, about her experience being a part of NFL Source. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back to Radio Row at Super Bowl 59, Saints Insider Live. I'm Zach Ewing, now sitting all by my lonesome, thanks to Brooks Kubina, the Eagles beat writer for The Athletic. You can check his work out at theathletic.com. Check out a subscription. They got some specials running all the time. Brooks does great work. And obviously, he's just one of many there. And obviously, our own Luke Johnson, thanks to him as well. He is the pool reporter for the AFC this week. And so he had to run off, I think, Andy Reid's press conference is at 11 or 11:15 this morning, and it's at the team hotel. So he's got to catch the bus over there and deal with that. So exciting stuff. I think I'm kind of like a lot of you in that during divisional round weekend and conference championship weekend, you're kind of looking at potential matchups and saying, okay, we could get Bills and Lions. We could get Commanders and Jaden Daniels coming into town, like all of these cool possible matchups. And then we ended up with a rematch of just 2 years ago, Chiefs-Eagles, and it felt like a little bit of a letdown. But I got to say, I'm coming around on it a little bit. We talked about it with Brooks, but I think, the three-peat angle, obviously that one was always front of mind. Like if you could get Chiefs against anybody, it was going to be interesting from a historical angle. But the fact that they have to kind of sandwich this three-peat against the same team that very nearly beat them a couple years ago out in the desert, I think is super intriguing. And from the other side, you have Philadelphia saying, well, we do not want to, be another team to get swept by the same team in a Super Bowl. Because if you look at Super Bowl history, this, I believe, is the 6th time that we've had a rematch within 5 years of the first one. We're not talking like Cowboys-Steelers played in the 70s and then they played again in the 90s. Not talking about that. But the two teams played against each other in a Super Bowl and then did it again within 5 years. So you're talking about the same core players, a lot of times the same quarterbacks or the same coaches. All 5 previous times, the team that won the first game ended up also winning the second game. I'm going to see if I can. It's Cowboys-Steelers in the 70s. I don't believe 49ers Bengals in the 80s counts because it was more than 5 years apart, although you could count that one as well. It was like 8 years apart, but it was the same quarterbacks, same core group of players, especially on the 49ers side. Cowboys-Bills is one. Giants-Patriots. Of course, Eli Manning beat the Patriots twice. And then Chiefs-49ers just in the last few years played. And the 49ers were quite a bit different, but the Chiefs did beat them twice. So every time that it seems to happen, the same team wins again. The Eagles don't want to do that. So you have this kind of redemption angle from the Philadelphia side. So I find it to be a super interesting matchup. And just being here, maybe it's just bias, but I do feel like it's getting to the point where I'm pretty excited for Sunday, pretty excited for this matchup. Do want to let you know that we are brought to you this morning by Ochsner Health and all week. And Ochsner Health is the official healthcare provider of the New Orleans Super Bowl Host Committee. So our thanks to them. And going to talk more about last night. I think Rod Walker's walking around. We may have him stop by and give us his impressions at some point. But we do have some videos as well from last night, and I apologize because they're vertical videos. Oh, Rod's right here. Rod's going to sit down. We're going to see some of those videos, but Rod, I was just mentioning the zaniness of media night last night, and I know you've done them before, but I don't know. It seems like they get crazier every year. I've only watched them on TV, but you got a guy dressed as a genie. You got a guy with like a baby around his neck. You got international media asking silly questions, and I mean, it's a circus, but it's also kind of what the people come to see.
This is my first time doing it in 6 years, but it was kind of the same. I don't know if it's gotten worse, but I mean, it's gotten worse since it first started. But yeah, I mean, there were times like I have a player trying to ask him a serious question, like trying to do some what I would call real work, and somebody will just walk up, hey, come play with this game and do this for me, like do this trick, like come on, man, like and they're just trying to get their video content and their videos on social media, so it's pretty annoying for people who are, trying to do some real work.
I stood at Nick Sirianni's podium, and my whole goal was to stand there until I could ask him about Kellen Moore. And I thought, okay, each team is out there for an hour, and I was fairly close to the front. I mean, sometimes there's like almost a line of media, and you have to wait for people to ask a question and move out of the way so you can get up there. And it was, only a couple minutes before I got to the front. But every time I try to ask him, I'm shouted out by somebody else asking him about. I can't even remember them all, but a lot of them were just, some of them were legitimate football questions, but some of them are just these inane questions. Jameis Winston's out there throwing W cookies at people so they can eat a W.
Yes.
I mean, so yeah, it gets a little bit like, and how long is it going to take me? It took me about 35, 40 minutes to finally ask Nick Sirianni this question. And he gave a good answer. We'll show the video here in a minute, but I was struck, and we was just talking to Luke about this a minute ago. I thought Kellen Moore kind of struck that balance between knowing he can't officially say anything about the Saints' job, and that obviously this is Super Bowl week and the Eagles are trying to win a championship, and also not just shutting it down and being uptight about the whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't actually stand over there, but I walked over there for a minute, and I saw we had Matt over there, so I said, okay, we're good. But yeah, I mean, I'm watching some of the stuff and reading some of the stuff. You could tell that he did kind of he probably talked a little bit more than you would have thought, but I mean, I thought he did a really good job of just saying what he talked about, like some of the things that he's good at, and also
fixing Rod's mic here. Yep.
But also saying that what the main focus is. So I think that, and we kind of knew he would do that. I mean, that's what we expected. So
yeah, and I mean, the Eagles' offensive players, and again, we have some videos with show. They were like effusive in their praise of this guy. Only worked with him for one season, which Dallas Goedert told me that. He said, look, it's only been one season, but they're impressed by him. Brooks was telling us he came into a pretty difficult situation. They fired Brian Johnson. Their offense was a mess last year. The whole team was a mess at the end of last year. And I think Vic Fangio gets a lot of credit, but Kellen Moore deserves a lot of that credit too.
Yeah, he does. I talked to Tanner McKee, who's like, I don't know if he's second string or third string. He's a backup quarterback. And the first thing he told me about was there was one game that he started against the Giants, and he said he was talking the night before. There was a play that he didn't really like, and so he called up Kellen Moore. They talked about it, and Kellen Moore just kind of like gave him the confidence that, okay, it's going to work fine. And because Tanner didn't like the play at all, but it ended up working, and the play went for like 40 yards, he said, when they actually ran in the game. But one of the things he talked about was he's like a really good communicator. Like you can really, it's kind of like a player's coach that if you don't like something, you can talk to him about it. And so he was really pleased with that. And, he said he'd make a really good head coach is what he said. But I mean, I know they're going to all say that probably, but that's what he said.
That's the thing. None of them are going to say,
yeah, this ain't your guy.
Yeah.
So I did try to ask Chauncey Gardner-Johnson about him. I was like, what's it like kind of going against him in practice every day? And Chauncey, he was like, no comment. Like, and it wasn't like a no comment. Like, no, he said, I don't know. That's what he said. Like, and he just kind of walked. He was like, and I think he probably just knew what I was going after. Like, just, and I guess he didn't want to like say, hey, I said the coach is leaving. I don't know. It was just one of those weird Chauncey Gardner-Johnson moments.
Yeah, it's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Saints fans remember this. Like, the guy's got the biggest mouth in the league, but he's not one of those guys who's going to go out of his way to praise other people, maybe even on his own team. And I was kind of you talked to him for a little while last night and said he was very kind of withdrawn.
Yeah, and I talked to Gary Smith, who was doing some work for AP, and he said the exact same thing happened to him. It was kind of strange. The first thing I asked him about was something about just New Orleans or something. He said, "Yeah, eat beignets and something." It was, it was just kind of, he was trying to be kind of funny, but it was decent. And then all of a sudden, he just like shut down. It was just like, so. And he was doing other people the exact same way. So he just,
maybe his mom told him he wasn't supposed to treat anybody in New Orleans well. I don't know. On the Chiefs side, what did you notice? Who'd you talk to?
I went to Chris Jones' thing and couldn't really get in, but I talked to like a bunch of players about this story and writing on about just how, people hate the Chiefs now. And I know one of the things that Xavier Worthy said, as soon as I asked him, he's like, "Yeah, man, we're getting that Tom Brady effect." Those are his exact words. So, I mean, I think, some of the players, they realize that people don't like the Chiefs. And even the crowd last night, I thought it was a pro-Eagles crowd. I don't know. Did you feel like that way? You thought it was pretty even? Or
I thought so. There were some pretty loud cheers for the Chiefs in the middle, in the middle session when they had both teams on the podium. But I will say, once the Eagles were done, that crowd disappeared. I mean, there were still Chiefs fans there, but it was a third of what it was earlier in the night.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just because, I mean, if you just sit in the stands, it's probably kind of a long. I don't know how exciting that is if you're just up there. And
if you're an Eagles fan and it's already past 9 o'clock, it's time to go to the bar.
Right. It's a Monday night, and you brought your kids. You probably want to get home, and so I mean, I get it, but but to me, it felt like more Eagles fans, and I don't think it was. I don't know if the numbers were more Eagles fans, but I just think it was just more. I just thought they were louder, and I think some of that fatigue has set in for.
And that's human nature, right?
Yeah,
and that's what the players are battling too. Is like, okay, yes, you have a comfort level and you've been here before, but at the same time, you have to kind of keep that motivation at the same level that you needed to win the first two.
Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the things somebody did ask Chris Jones about that. And, he just talked about how he said it never gets old to him. And I mean, you've seen videos and highlights of Chris Jones. He was crying, I think, at the AFC Championship game. I mean, he gets really emotional, and so it still means a lot to him. But you still have to kind of try to find that something to make it exciting a third time. I mean, you've gone through the emotions on all this, so.
Yeah, I'm going to show this Chris Jones video I took last night because I asked him, just to your point, I said, "What is the vibe in New Orleans like compared to other Super Bowl cities?" And he sits and goes, "Oh, let's see. There was Miami, Tampa, Arizona, Phoenix." I mean, he's like listing all these cities and trying to remember them. And then he goes off into this tangent about rappers he likes from New Orleans and from Louisiana. And so he's very casual about it. And this is a very casual setting.
Right.
But it did kind of strike me as how it was almost like a bored answer. So let's watch this. This is like a 30-second video here.
Very different. It's been Miami, Tampa, Las Vegas, Arizona, and now it's New Orleans. I love New Orleans. There's the peak. No Limit Soldiers. Been a huge fan. Lil Boosie, Whammy, Trill, ENT, NBA Young Boy. I know that's from Baton Rouge, but it's close enough. I have so much love for New Orleans. And Kellen Moore is boisterous here. Are amazing.
So, I don't. You couldn't actually hear that on our side, but again, it's a casual setting. What is he supposed to say in that situation? But the Chiefs, just as a group, kind of struck me as it was very much a been here, done that sort of. You had some Eagles players, and obviously some of them were on the team 2 years ago too. But some of them are taking photos of the dome and things like that. You didn't see that on the Kansas City side.
Yeah, I mean they've done it. I think they're really locked in though. I mean they want to get this 3P. Just kind of talk to guys, the guys who've been there for a long time. I mean they want to get enough because nobody's ever done it. So I get that for sure. Can I share my Chris Jones story? I know you heard it before.
Yeah, no, I actually really like this story. Go ahead.
Okay, so when I was covering high school sports in Mississippi, and this was actually my last year in Mississippi before I moved to New Orleans, so that had been 2013. So Chris Jones came out of high school in 2014. But anyway, in Mississippi, there's a list called the Dandy Dozen. Every kid who plays football wants to be on that list. It's the top 12 football players in the state going into their senior season. And so anyway, we talked to a bunch of different college recruiters, and we look at stats from the previous season, and that's how we compile the list. And it's like in Mississippi, like it's a really big deal. Deuce McAllister would still tell you today that he's disappointed that he didn't make it his senior year. But anyway, that year, some years you have like 10 guys and you're trying to find 2 more to fill the spots out. But some years you have 15 guys, you got to like trim it down. But this particular year, Chris Jones, he had transferred his sophomore year, and by his junior year, like he had to sit out a little bit. So people didn't really know about him. The only people that really knew about him was Mississippi State. They had this recruiter named Tony Hughes, who's one of the best recruiters in the Southeastern Conference. So Tony knew about Chris Jones, and they were kind of trying to keep him under wraps. So I remember I talked to Tony. I called him. I was like, man, it's like 2 more spots, man. I've been kind of hearing about this Chris Jones guy and then this other guy. And Tony, and I was like, what do you think about Chris Jones? Tony's like, he's just okay. He didn't want Ole Miss to know about him. He didn't want Alabama to know about him. So they just kept under wraps.
And as a Mississippi State guy, you decided to help him out there.
No, I didn't know this. I didn't know that I didn't even realize that's what he was doing. Like, I didn't know how good he was. And so he ended up not making the list. And Chris had actually played on the Mississippi. They had an all-star basketball game that summer. It was the first time I had actually seen him in person. And you just saw his size and how good he moved. And I was like, man, this guy's pretty good athlete. But anyway, he ended up not making the list. It's the biggest regret of my high school sports writing career. And everybody who worked at the Clarion Ledger, the paper I worked at, they had these snubs, some guys that they overlooked. And Chris Jones is mine. One of my coworkers, they still talk about Deuce McAllister didn't make it. Eric Mose, who played with the Buffalo Bills, didn't make it back in his year. So, that's my Chris Jones story. And every time he makes a play now, one of my former coworkers will call me or text me saying, hey, did that guy make Dandy Dozen? Like, that's just kind of our running joke. And it's been going on forever now. I mean, Chris Jones he's had a Hall of Fame career.
You just got to embrace it at this point.
Yeah.
Were you there when Deuce didn't make it?
No, I hadn't started yet. But
okay.
That was 96, so I came a few years after that. But so Deuce had some injuries his junior year, which kind of messed his chances up. But Deuce was always considered the biggest snub. Well, probably the guys I said, Deuce, Eric Mose, but Chris Jones is probably surpassed.
He's
all
rising
now.
up the list. Yeah. By the way, Deuce McAllister will be here Thursday with us at Radio Row for a few minutes. So looking forward to that. Drew Brees is going to be here Thursday as well. Big day for us. As people start to pour into Radio Row more and more.
Speaking of Deuce, there's a Kansas City Chiefs running backs coach Todd Pinkston, who I did talk to last night. Him and Deuce played at rival high schools in Mississippi, Morton and Forest. And I got a chance to talk to Todd. Todd played at Southern Miss, played with the Eagles, played for Andy Reid. And Andy Reid just really liked him, so he's kind of just let him hang around. Todd played receiver, but now he's a running backs coach. And this is his 3rd year there, maybe 2nd year. I can't remember if 2nd or 3rd year, but got a chance to talk to him as well.
Did he have any good Deuce stories? I mean,
no, not really, because he was 2 years older than Deuce, and Todd didn't make Dandy Dozen either. They ended up making it to the NFL, but they're like really good friends.
Yeah.
Mississippi, two small towns right next door to each other, so everybody knows everybody, and so.
Speaking of 2 years older, and this struck me when we were talking about Kellen Moore too. Kellen Moore played against Derek Carr in college. Kellen Moore is at Boise State. He was a senior. Carr was a sophomore. Boise State was a lot better than Fresno State, but it was 57-7. The Broncos won that game in Fresno. So that'll become a talking point, I think.
Yeah, I've been seeing it on Twitter a lot, and I didn't even look at the actual stats of the game. I saw the score, but did you look at the box score?
Yeah, it wasn't crazy, but obviously Kellen had a much better game. I'm gonna see if I can look it up while we're live on the air here. I think that was 2011. There's actually the full game's up on YouTube. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. Kellen Moore, 23 of 31, 254 yards, 3 touchdowns. Carr was 17 of 30, 126 yards and an interception. So honestly, not quite as bad as you might expect from 57-7, but obviously he outplayed Derek. And again, he was a senior, Carr was a sophomore, so had a much better team around him. Carr has gone on to have the much better quarterbacking career as a player. But it's just interesting, and I do think that's one thing Kellen Moore is going to have to figure out is what do you want to do with Derek Carr in conjunction with the front office? Are we keeping him around for another year? Do I like him as a a solution beyond that, or are we going to try to cut bait and start to reset the salary cap?
Yeah, that's going to be the probably. I mean, we think he has his coaching staff probably intact, but this is probably like the biggest decision he's going to make in this year one. And I think everybody's going to be paying attention to it. Obviously, people in New Orleans are down on Carr and kind of want to see the team move on, but we don't know what direction Kellen Moore is thinking. And I don't know if he was even asked that last night. Do you know?
I think he was asked generally, what do you look for in quarterback play?
Okay.
I think
which is probably
yeah, some of the reporters were trying to be coy with their questions too.
Right. I'm sure he was able to. He knew that, so he wasn't going to say it. So I don't know what his response. I didn't see his actual responses on what he's looking for in the quarterback, but I'm sure he probably kept it.
Good leader, I mean, things like that.
Yeah. So.
All right, you are watching Radio Row live here from Super Bowl 59. This is the Saints Insider. We're brought to you by Ochsner Health. Going to take a quick break. Matthew Paris is here. Might chat to him for a few minutes. We've also got some videos from Media Night that will play some of the Eagles players and coaches talking about Kellen Moore. But we'll be back right after this.
At Ochsner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Ochsner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one. You. Ochsner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
In this series, we're going to show you how the Super Bowl comes to life. First, we're going to talk to Seth Jadowski. He is the head of music for the NFL. As a singer and someone who has had the honor of singing the national anthem in the Superdome, I was so excited to hear how Seth and his team put on the iconic Super Bowl halftime show. What goes into it? How do they produce it in such a unique place of the Superdome? So here you're going to find out.
Welcome back to Radio Row here at Super Bowl 59, Saints Insider Live. Zach Ewing joined with Rod Walker and now with Advocate Times-Picayune Saints beat writer Matthew Paris. Matt, we were talking to Luke earlier, and Rod, we're not actually around Kellen Moore. You were last night. You talked to him extensively. I thought he did a nice job sort of striking a balance between not being able to talk about the Saints' job, but also not wanting to shut down all questioning and kind of be, super reserved about it.
Yeah, curmudgeon central.
Right.
Part of that also was just like a feel out for how's this guy going to be with the media as a head coach potentially. Like, what's his background? What's his leadership style like? How does he view the job he's done with the Eagles, kind of his career path? And we got all sorts of answers about that, and he came away impressive enough. He's not the best quote in the world, but he should be fine for our purposes. But I thought he was pretty well polished, pretty well reserved, and I thought he handled it well. That's not an easy situation, I don't think.
He had a big smile on his face the whole time, which you don't see from NFL coaches and players too often.
No, true. And I think the thing that made him maybe laugh the hardest was when he was asked about, whipping Derek Carr's butt in college, and he was talking about
what did he say? I didn't catch that answer.
He just pivoted to Derek's a great quarterback and has respect for him, but he also talked about being in the position of he's been coaching where he goes against guys that he's coached with, goes against guys that he played with. He said I started coaching pretty young. He was just 29 when he was the offensive coordinator. So
it's crazy, and
he's been doing this for 6 years. So he's the interesting candidate where he's been doing this a long time now, but yet he doesn't. I mean, he's not old, so he kind of brings an interesting perspective to it, I think.
After talking to him, I assume this is the first time you've talked to him in person. Yeah. Are you more or less convinced he can kind of command a locker room and be the Jeff Duncan alpha coach that he says the Saints need?
I don't know. I mean, he doesn't really strike me as alpha, but you don't know how he is with the press versus the media. I mean, I didn't cover Sean Payton, but I think players would tell you that Sean Payton was also different with them than he was with the media. I think a little bit anyway. So, it's just a matter of can he command a locker room, but you can command a locker room with all sorts of different ways. Like look at Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings. He's not Mr. Disciplinarian by any
Sean
means.
McVay,
Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel. Like there's a whole different type of coach that has succeeded in the NFL that's on the rise. And I think the one important thing he did say was he'd want to call plays as a head coach. He revealed that. That's not a huge surprise given his background, but some people like to delegate, and he will not be. He'll be calling the plays if he gets his job.
And every now and then you see a coach say that, and then after a year or two of doing it,
Right.
they decided maybe isn't going to work that well. So, yeah, I thought it was interesting. Is there any chance that he's not the guy at this point?
I mean, he'd have to have like a change of heart, or he just simply wouldn't want to have the job. I mean, that's what it would boil down to is, let's say they win, things are going great for him, he wants to stay again, or they lose this close and he says, I want to roll it back. Like, we don't know what his motivation is, and as much as we tried to ask, he gave pretty much the same answer on every question.
Mhm.
But yeah, he would have to obviously want the job, but it didn't seem like he didn't want it.
He could hit like a giant pothole or something in New Orleans and say, you know what? I'm not doing this every day.
Screw this place. Yeah.
Take the Causeway Bridge. Like,
Yeah.
this is taking forever.
Yeah, although New Orleans in the Super Bowl is crazier than usual, but also like they've cleaned the place up a little bit. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Not a fair,
Yeah.
not a fair comparison to what everyday life is, I don't think. What else did you notice at media night? I don't know. You were writing your story about Moore during much of the Chiefs time, but I don't know
Yeah.
if you got out there at any point.
I did. I went and did the Chiefs. The wackiest bit I saw was Guillermo from Jimmy Kimmel toss powderless beignets, or he had Carson Wentz tossing powderless beignets into his mouth, and he wanted him to throw it like a quarterback. Carson Wentz was like, have these been touched by a bunch? He was like a germaphobe. It was kind of funny. Besides that, there's a dude dressed as a genie, face paint.
Yeah, the genie
blue
was
and all.
With a bright light sign that said "Make your wish,"
Yeah,
something like that. Or, yeah,
props to him, I guess. And the randomest celebrity I saw was Joey from The Bachelor, like guy who's dating New Orleans Kelsey Anderson.
I would not have recognized him, but good on you.
Yes, good on.
Yeah,
I probably should have told our digital team about that, but hey, here we go.
yeah. You never know. You never know. We do have Blake Grupe is over there. We're going to see if he's going to stop by,
Yeah.
see if he can get his attention. Saints kicker. Matt, I don't know. The craziness of media night. Rod and I were talking about this, but for the Chiefs, this is such old hat. And I know a lot of the Eagles players were doing it 2 years ago too. But that's the juxtaposition I noticed was some of the Eagles players are still got their phones out and they're taking videos of the dome and scene and everything. And the Chiefs just were not doing that.
No, and it was interesting to talk to a guy like Carson Wentz, who this is his first time going through this. And I asked him about the 3P, embracing history, and he said that like you can tell that they're chasing history, but the habits and the stuff, like he could tell that they had been there before, and that's how Andy Reid set the practice schedule and all that.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick 30-second break, and we do have Saints kicker Blake Grupe here, so we're live from Radio Row and be back right after this.
At Auctioner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one. You. Auctioner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
Okay, false start on Radio Row on me. Blake Grupe is going to be back in about 15 minutes. Yeah, I know we're on. I'm talking. We're on. We're live. But yeah, Blake Grupe is going to be back in about 15 minutes and maybe 20 minutes, and we will talk to him then. He is here at Radio Row. Has one more interview to sneak in first. So as we were saying, Matt.
And Rod.
And Rod,
next
you
year.
sat down. It's live, baby. It's all live. Media night is crazy. For the teams, at least, things settle down quite a bit now. They've got press conferences the next 3 days. but those are in a more traditional setting. They're going to be sitting at a table with just media, with just TV people. I have to think this is when, for the teams, it gets down to business as usual, and they kind of get into a normal game week as much as they can.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what. Yeah, Monday night's fun, but you want to kind of get that out of the way, and now you can really lock in onto the game. And for people like us, if we're really trying to do some interviews, these are the times we go talk to players, and not what we had to deal with last night.
Right.
So,
last night is important because it's the first time we're going to get
yeah.
Kellen Moore in the first. You got to see what he's going to say, but now the real football questions, the questions about the matchup, the focus kind of turns.
Yeah, no, it does, and the access gets a little limited. Like, it allows guys to focus on the game, and it should be a great game. I mean, that you could tell both teams, just even by their composure, like you could tell that these are like stacked rosters. And it's funny, even just walking around, it's like, oh man, there's Saquon Barkley, there's Jalen Hurts. Like, there's just a ton of talent in New Orleans right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and this scene is already, I think, much busier than it was yesterday, and it's just going to continue to get that way. Like I said, Thursday we've got Deuce McAllister coming by, we've got Drew Brees coming by.
Morstead.
Yeah, Thomas Morstead's tomorrow. Josh Jacobs of the Packers will be here Thursday. Michael Brockers, former LSU and NFL linebacker, he'll be here Friday. So, it's filling in, and we're going to get some guys just walking by, like we're going to get Blake Grupe here in a few minutes. So, quite a scene. I can't help but wonder how far the Saints are away from this scene themselves. It feels like they're. I mean, they played both of these teams. They played the Eagles close, and it's not like the Chiefs beat them by 30 points or anything. Although the Chiefs don't do that, but man, it feels like they're a long way away. Feels like it's a different sport.
Yeah, difference. I don't know if I'd go that far, but they are very far away. I mean,
it's like Hammond at least.
You just think about the way. Yeah. I mean, think about these two teams. Like, these two teams have been back. They played 2 years ago. The Eagles were 10-1 last year before their meltdown. The Chiefs obviously have won 2 in a row and have been in. They've made 7 straight AFC championships. Like, these teams are annually in the mix, and that's just not the Saints right now. And they have a lot of work to do to be just in the mix annually. Forget about this game.
Yeah, I keep thinking about how we'll say sometimes on the pod, like, man, this is a big game for the Saints. This is, this feels like a really pivotal game, and it's week 7 and it's October 23rd or whatever. And the Chiefs are like sleepwalking until the divisional round. I mean, there's no such thing as a big game for them until January.
Yeah, I mean, they go into the season, they're a playoff team. Like, that's not even a question. It's just a matter of, are they going to be the 1 seed or are they going to be the 2 seed? Pretty much is what it's been like for them. So, but they're an exception. I mean, they're an exception to the rule. That's why they're going for their 3rd straight title. They have a, generational talent at quarterback. So, I mean, that changes the whole picture when you get one of those.
Should we talk about the Saints almost had Patty Mahomes? Should we go down that? For those who don't know the story, which if you don't, this might be your first time tuning in to any of our programs, but in 2017, the Saints were planning on taking Patrick Mahomes was number 11, I believe. They had the number 11 pick.
It depends if Lattimore was there. The way Jeff Duncan's always told it to us is that if Lattimore was still there, that was going to be their pick. But it was, Ramczyk was, I guess it would be like in case Lattimore was gone.
Well, the Bills had the 10th pick, the pick right in front of the Saints.
Right.
And I don't know if they thought the Bills might take Lattimore. The way I've heard it told was that Mahomes was definitely on the board. And at that point, he was going to be the heir apparent to Drew Brees. Maybe Brees was going to play 2 more years and then let Mahomes take over. But as fate would have it, the Chiefs, in a move that Buffalo Bills fans regret to the max, traded with the Buffalo Bills, moved into number 10, and took Patrick Mahomes. The Saints got Marshawn Lattimore, who's a great player, was a very, very good player as a rookie, and maybe he's fading, he's had injury concerns and all that sort of stuff, but it wasn't a bad pick, but it also wasn't Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, but nobody's a Patrick Mahomes. So,
no.
But yeah.
It could have just set them up for the future, like you said, but I don't know. What was interesting about the Chiefs' move at the time was, they had Alex Smith. He was a solid quarterback, but he was just the guy wasn't going to get you there. I think they had made the playoffs 5 times under Smith or 4, and they won once. Like, Andy Reid knew the ceiling with him, and that's why you got to credit the Chiefs just in general for like knowing and recognizing what their ceiling was as a team and making those hard decisions, making that costly trade up. Like it costs a lot to move up from, what were they, 26, 28 to 10?
Yeah, that's a big move.
It's a big move, and yeah, it's just I feel like a lot of NFL teams kind of aren't honest with their rosters some part, and I think we're pivoting to the Saints of today. Maybe that's why.
That is a good way to put it. That they're not honest about their roster, and I also think, like, we see teams plan for the future at quarterback, and it's always like, this feels a year too early, but it's not usually. You know, we've seen the Packers do it twice with drafting Aaron Rodgers maybe a year or two before you thought they needed a quarterback, then drafting Jordan Love a couple of years before you thought they would need a quarterback, and that's worked out for them. We see it with Mahomes. You know, hate to say this for Saints fans, but maybe the Falcons have done that with Michael Penix, where everyone said on draft night, what are they doing? They just signed Kirk Cousins. Now it looks like Michael Penix, the future is now in Atlanta. So, good organizations plan ahead. It doesn't always work, but they do try.
It's the one position where you really need to plan ahead. I think the Saints they didn't do it. I mean, they just they let Breeze play until the wheels fell off pretty much.
They have, to their credit, they have drafted quarterbacks in back-to-back drafts, even when they first signed Carr with Jay Kaner, but they've taken 4th round, 5th round swings. They haven't really made that aggressive, let's go get our guy trade, but you know what? It's also easier said than done too.
And even with Breeze, it didn't really work out, but they did try Jameis. They brought Jameis in to kind of sit behind Breeze and gave him a chance. Then you try Andy Dalton. That's probably a little bit of a drop off, but they made some efforts. They just swung and missed, I guess, on those.
And I think it doesn't always work. The Niners drafted Trey Lance a couple years ago. That was a complete bust. They gave up a ton for him and then got rid of him a year later. So we've seen it happen where it doesn't work out, but I do think you always have to be thinking about it.
You do, and a lot of the it's also hard to sit a guy for an extended stretch.
Sure. Like,
as soon as Kirk Cousins started to struggle, the Penix whispers came out, and they got him in there sooner than later. When teams draft their quarterback, normally you don't see your Derek Carrs of the world in front of them. You see your Case Keenums, your who's the guy that was ahead of Mitch Trubisky a few years ago? Gannon? No, not Gannon.
In Chicago?
He played in Arizona. What was that guy's name?
I'm totally blanking on it. Maybe somebody in the
He's bald.
John Kitna?
No.
Who Dat Daddy did let us know Marshawn Lattimore's pick 13. So we appreciate that. That was not 11. It was pick 13. Man, I got nothing for you.
Wow.
You're from Chicago, Matt.
I know. This is why I'm failing. He also played for Tampa. I can see the guy's face. That was Mike Glennon.
There you go.
Glennon. There we go. Thank you, Google. Yeah, your Mike Glennons, your Case Keenums, Colt McCoy, like that, guys that are not going, like, stopgap quarterbacks. Teams don't really view Derek Carr as a stopgap quarterback, and so it's harder to take that swing.
And the other part of this is when you sign a rookie, you got 4 years and you can extend him to 5. That's it. And that's for a first rounder. Second rounder, you get a year less than that. So if you let him sit like Jordan Love, again, Packers did the right thing, but he was only the starter for a year, and then all of a sudden he was owed big money.
Right. Yeah. And even if they start from day one, really, you only have sometimes you can tell in year 1 the guy isn't it. Year 2 is really crucial for them because you have to take advantage of their lower salary cap too. Their low cap hit. You can build these teams around them. That's what makes a team like Washington with Jaden Daniels so interesting. Like, how are they going to capitalize on his window? Same thing with the Patriots and Drake May. Like
Houston, I think
exactly.
Houston really went all out in free agency this year and tried to surround C.J. Stroud with a good team, and they made the playoffs again. They won a playoff game, but they actually C.J. regressed in some areas, and I think the team did too. And so, yeah, but now all of a sudden, clock's ticking on Houston. You got another year or two before C.J. Stroud's owed big money, and you have to make a decision on him and a bunch of other tough decisions.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you are watching Radio Row live from Super Bowl 59 at the New Orleans Convention Center. This is the Saints Insider Live, talking with Rod Walker and Matthew Paris. We're going to get Blake Grupe, Saints kicker, here in just a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break, and I don't know if we're going to get Blake right when we come back, but it'll be here within a few minutes, and we'll be back on Radio Row right after this.
In this series, we're going to show you how the Super Bowl comes to life. This time we're talking Super Bowl week events with Nikki Yule, Director of Events for the NFL. There are a lot of opportunities to join in on the festivities for locals and visitors alike. From opening night to game day, Nikki is sharing how she and her team will make the game week experience unique to New Orleans. Check it out.
At Ochsner Health, we believe in community, serving our neighborhood with more than just exceptional care. With educational programs that train the next generation and open new doors and possibilities for the future. More programs that teach about the benefits of healthy food and nutrition. We believe in innovation with compassion to give more hope and create more smiles. Because at the core of every community is you. Ochsner Health. Long live our community. Long live you.
Welcome back to Radio Row here at Super Bowl 59. Zach Ewing joined by Matthew Paris and Rod Walker. We're going to have Saints kicker Blake Grupe on the show here in a few minutes. He's finishing up another interview. Going to be interesting, guys. I'll ask Blake what he thinks, and obviously he's not out there for every play or anything, but the Saints did play both teams. He got an up close and personal look at both Philadelphia and Kansas City. Obviously, the Saints were much more in the game against Philadelphia. Coulda, woulda, shoulda won the game, although I think I did find this funny. This is a total aside, but Nick Sirianni was talking last night about the guys kind of become famous for some off-the-wall decisions in game. I mean, sometimes he'll decide to kick a field goal when you think he should go for it, and other times he'll go for a fourth and long when you're going, why didn't you just take the points? And he was doing that day. Like the Eagles could have been winning that game long before they ultimately did, because it seemed like every time he pushed a button, it was the wrong one that day until the end.
Yeah, I mean, they rely on the push tush 99.9% of the time, and the 0.1 they didn't. They tried to sneak it outside to Saquon Barkley to fool everyone, and the Saints completely shut it down, and you just overthink it sometimes. But that was not a Kellen Moore decision. That was a Nick Sirianni one that he said after the game. So that was such a weird game. That was the one that you look back at the Saints season. I don't know if it was the turning point game, but obviously it was the first one of a 7-game losing streak. It was right there for them.
I say the next week.
Yeah, the Falcons won.
But that's the game that next week.
That was even worse.
But that's the game Eric McCoy gets hurt on the first
that's
drive.
Also true. Yeah. But I mean, I thought they played much better in Atlanta the next week. They should have won that game. Rashid Shaheed makes a super uncharacteristic mistake, muffs the punt into the end zone, gives the Falcons a touchdown. Derek Carr had a pick six that was a ball just tipped straight up in the air, and I'm blanking on the name. The Falcons linebacker who had like 15 tackles that day intercepts it and takes it back for a touchdown.
He got player of the week wherever he was.
And, he got player of the week, and then he was hurt late in that game and he missed like 6 weeks for the Falcons. So in a way, it was a microcosm of the Saints season where nothing went right. They outplayed the Falcons. And still, despite all of that, took the lead with a minute to go, and then Younghoe Koo hit a 58-yard field goal to win it. To me, that was the real turning point, because then it was the next week they had to go to Kansas City, and Derek Carr throws an interception on the first drive. He gets hurt on the last drive, and like all of a sudden, a really promising start was in a tailspin, and it was these two teams, the Eagles and Chiefs, that were kind of bookended those games.
Yeah, and but that Chiefs game was the final score is much closer than that game actually was. Like
Bink Saunders tried to save that game.
That was a classic Dennis Allen game. The blown out against a good team, make just enough of a comeback to like say, "Oh, we're close," and buddy, they were not close.
He made a career out of those kind of games, man.
Yeah, we're right there. Right there. I would actually say maybe the Eagles game and the Falcons game were Dennis Allen games too, where you're just, the team plays well and they seem like they play well enough to win, and just find a way at the end to screw it up.
Yep. That's That's what those were, and they
Jordan
started
Howard
they
and
piled
running
up.
into Marshawn Lattimore and Will Harris from the
Oh,
Dallas
was it?
Goddard.
Yeah,
I asked
Goddard.
Dallas Goddard about that play as well, and he was giving credit to his teammates for forcing 3 safeties to run into each other on the play. I think that might be a little green-colored glasses view, but Andy Reid's giving his press conference over there. Luke was here. He made it over there, I hope.
Yeah, he did.
He ditched the Hawaiian shirt for a Chiefs pullover, but he's given his press conference. And like I said, I mean, I think we're down to business now for these teams, counting down 5 days until Sunday. I said yesterday, guys, to me, whoever takes the lead in this game is in really good shape. Not to say there couldn't be a comeback, and we see the Chiefs come back all the time, but the Eagles specifically are a very good front-running team and not a great comeback team.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, were they up 7 in the first meeting in the fourth quarter? They were up in the fourth quarter for sure.
They were
10?
up. So, no, they were up at
No, that was the
halftime.
Niners game.
I believe the Eagles were up 10 at halftime of that game. And then the Chiefs actually came back and led by 8. And it was the Eagles who had to come back in the fourth quarter, tied the game up, but then Harrison Butker hit the game-winning field goal with like 9 seconds.
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to, you need a special performance from Saquon. Like, out of curiosity, I looked up what the most rushing yards were in a Super Bowl. It was 204.
Wait. 204.
John Riggins?
Right team, wrong player.
So it was a Washington player. Ernest Biner?
No,
It's somebody that's kind of
very random.
obscure.
He's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I
remember
remember the
the
rookie.
Was that the Doug Williams Super Bowl? Oh,
Yeah.
no. That was that one.
Which Doug Williams was the MVP of, incidentally.
Oh.
It wasn't the guy who ran for 200 yards.
Timmy Smith.
Okay, yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
Riggins had
If
some
it was
big
multiple
games,
choice, I would have got it. Tim Smith.
What is the first Super Bowl you guys remember watching? Rod, you grew up a Steelers fan. It's probably a Steelers Super Bowl.
No, actually, my first one was the one. I guess the Steelers Cowboys the second time.
79, 70,
Yeah, that one.
80, whatever. Yeah.
I vaguely remember the one when the Raiders and the Vikings played, just because Willie Brown had the interception. It's kind of one of the most iconic plays, and they always showed on like NFL films. You see Willie Brown for the Raiders. He's from my hometown, so it's like, I don't know if I remember the actual play or just kind of remember just seeing highlights of it, because that play was just so, just so iconic. So it's the play he's running, and they always show it in slow motion. He's just running, and you got the Raiders. They're wearing the white uniforms, I think. And anyway, but yeah, the Cowboys Steelers, those are the ones.
Super Bowl 13, I think that was. 13.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
I think it was the Broncos Packers game in '97, or it might have been the Falcons Broncos in '98, because I was 4 or 5. We went to.
That is young to be remembering a Super Bowl, man.
Yeah, well,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the game I have faint recollections of. I remember like stepping in like some chip dip that was very cold on my foot. I remember nothing.
The things we remember, man.
I remember nothing about the game, but how cold that like dip and how gross that was.
I will tell you, the first one I remember was Super Bowl. I think it was 25. It was the wide left Super Bowl. Scott Norwood misses the kick for the Bills, and I was like 5, 6 years old, and I don't know if I had eaten something or if I had just caught a stomach bug, but I was in the bathroom throwing up, and my dad comes in to tell me he misses the kick. And then I don't remember the one the year after that, which was Washington beating Buffalo.
Right.
But I remember everything I grew up a Dallas fan. I remember Dallas winning back-to-back Super Bowls after that. So we're really making a lot of fans here. We're like Broncos fan growing up, Steelers and Cowboys. So we're making a lot of friends growing up here in New Orleans.
The first Super Bowl I remember not watching, I skipped it. I just didn't want to watch it. It was the 49ers and Bengals. At the time, neither team had been there.
Right after the catch, Dwight Clark had the catch to send them to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but I was just, those teams were just so bad. Like because it was always just Steelers, Cowboys, Raiders. It's kind of those same teams.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to a skating rink and didn't watch the Super Bowl. And that's the only thing I remember about that day. Like I didn't watch any of it.
Was this an ice skating rink?
No.
Okay.
Just roller skating.
Oh, I'm so
No
bad at
ice
roller
skating.
skating. Roller
No
skating.
ice skating.
I'm a
in
better ice
Mississippi.
skater than I am a roller skater.
Yeah.
We didn't get much ice in Mississippi.
Interesting thing here that Robert Young, who's behind the scenes here, just asked. Ticket prices for this game on Sunday are like nosediving. They were super expensive. They were over $5,000 this is on the secondary market I'm talking about just a couple of weeks ago. Now they're down to like $3,000.
Yeah, I saw one for $3,400.
Yeah.
I think this morning, because someone was asking me like what the cheapest I think they could get. I told her to just kind of, maybe wait it out a little bit more.
Cheap is a relative term, but you're gonna like.
And I said, what's the least you pay? She said, I said, what's the most you would pay? She said she would pay $1,000. I said, I don't know if you're gonna get that low, but you might. I mean, you might just get lucky and somebody just says, you know what? But
it also depends on how badly you want to go to the game. Like if you're a diehard Eagles fan who's never seen your team, like
right.
Well, and
she's not a diehard of either. So she just wants. It's in New Orleans, so she's like,
right. And I think locals may actually get an opportunity to go for not as crazy of a prices as we're used. I know last year in Vegas was like record prices. It was like $7,000. One theory is that out of town fans are having trouble doing it because the conversely, the hotel prices have gone sky high, where you can't get a hotel anywhere in the entire, tri-parish area or whatever you want to call it, for less than, I don't know, $1,000. I mean, we're talking like Travelodge and Motel 6 is like $1,000 a night, and then it goes up from there. Right. So,
I mean, you could always wait till week 1 next year and get it for like $10.
What was it? The
same building, same coach.
I don't think it got as bad this year as it did in 2023, kind of surprisingly. But that Panthers Saints game in December of 23 was the one where it was literally $2 on SeatGeek plus fees.
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
Yeah, there was a little stretch this past season though, where you could have saw like the Saints and Pelicans for like $10 on back-to-back days or something. So.
Yeah, I mean, Saints Raiders at the end of this year, although the Raiders fans tend to travel even when they're not very good. So I think you got some.
Yeah, they were better than the Saints.
No, they beat the Saints. Got Hemisphere says, you talking about that Eric McCoy injury. Taysom also got hurt. I mean, that's
the Atlanta game.
That's a big question for the Saints as well. What do you do with Taysom Hill? What does Taysom Hill want to do? When is he going to be healthy? I mean, this is a guy, you talk about a guy who, like Lane Johnson said in our story last night, Kellen Moore is a football genius. Pick it up on newsstands near you. You'd like to see what Kellen Moore could do with a healthy Taysom Hill.
Yeah, you would, but he faces, it's not just, saw this with Chase Young, and I don't know the exact extent of Taysom Hill's injury, but he reportedly suffered additional damage than just a torn ACL. But it's not just a torn ACL. Then you're getting into real lengthy timelines, real slow recovery. Like for Chase Young, he had to have a full knee reconstruction. They had to take the patellar tendon in his one knee. He basically had 2 knee surgeries because they had to go into the other knee, get like the healthy part and move it to his damaged knee. And it took him so long. He got hurt kind of near the end of the 21 season, only played 3 games in 2022. And man, he wasn't fully healthy really until 23. And then he had like a neck issue.
And I hate to say it, but the question is, Taysom Hill's going to be 35 by opening day next year. Is he ever going to be the same? I mean, getting healthy is one thing.
I don't think so.
Is he ever going to have the same level of explosiveness on that knee at 35 years old?
Normally, I would say no, but just I remember. I think did you do the story or Luke did?
Luke did, yeah. Bionic
I mean,
freak.
Taysom's like,
that's a good point.
I mean, I think he might be the one guy that you say he'll be fine. So I mean, it's just a matter of like if Taysom wants to come back and play and be that guy, he's gonna be that guy. Taysom's not gonna come back and not be Taysom.
And even if he's not as explosive, I mean, his diverse skill set can still fool teams. Like I think he can still be an effective football player. I just don't know if he'll have that same burst.
Yeah, when Darren Rizzi took over this team, that was right before Taysom got hurt and was out for the season. But they were using him in such a way. I mean, that Browns game was a tour de force for Taysom Hill. Like Jameis Winston came down here and was playing really well that day. And that's as good as he's played, maybe since his first couple of years in the league. And yet the Browns still got blown out because Taysom Hill had the game of his life, and then of course it was the next week he gets hurt. But on the topic of Darren Rizzi, I'm curious. I'll ask Blake Grupe about this, but he's in limbo, man. Like Rod, you brought this up a couple times. He's the guy I probably feel the worst for just waiting this out.
Yeah, he's been, and he wants this job and he's willing to wait it out because that's how bad he wants to be a head coach, especially a place he's familiar with. So there were the reports last week that he has the opportunity to get that Broncos.
Yeah, it's an either or situation,
which is going to be weird because if he gets that, he'll get to walk in the room with Will Lutz, who he decided not to stick with and replace him with the guy who's going to be
awkward, isn't it?
Who's going to be on our show next?
We do have breaking news here that it's not that it came out an hour ago, and it's not that big of a surprise. But President Donald Trump is expected to attend the game on Sunday, Super Bowl 59. So what time are you guys going to leave to go through security that morning? 11 o'clock? Yeah.
I was thinking 8 a.m. I live on the West Bank, so that's another 3 hours.
Takes you a couple hours just to get here. So, yeah, he was here.
He was here for the LSU championship.
Trump was here for the LSU Clemson national championship game, which was a whole ordeal. I had the suitcase full of peel back the curtain here, the suitcase full of the poster pages that the LSU players held up that said the advocate, champs or whatever, which obviously you don't want anybody to see. What is going on with our background here? What do we just got like some fireworks in the background or something? What? Did I do something?
Oh.
Did I do the?
There you go.
Oh my gosh! Look at that.
Wow. That's high-grade technology.
I looked up and I said, "What the hell is going on?" I think it might have to be like in the middle.
In the middle.
Do it again. Yes.
Wow.
That's it. That should be a thing, man. Yeah.
So anyway, I had the poster papers for that said, which obviously you don't want anybody to see in case LSU doesn't win the game. You have to print these things ahead of time, and then you just throw them out if LSU loses and hope they never see the light of day. I might have kept one just for posterity's sake, but I had 2 suitcases full of these things because we tried to give them to all the players and some of the fans and everything. And I was in charge. I was going to be on the field after the game. I was in charge of passing them out. Well, because Trump was there, and this is still while he was still president the first time, the security was outrageous that day, as it is for any sitting president. And the security wanted to dump the things out and look through the entire bag. And I'm going, well, how come the X-ray machine is not enough? Like, you can clearly see that all that's in there is paper. That was the 2 duffel bags. They were literally just full of newspaper. And I think I was finally able to convince one of the security guys to take it behind like a barrier, a bastion, to look at it and say that I can't let anybody see that, because then if they lose, it's the advocate jinxed them and all this sort of stuff. So I don't think we're doing that this week, which maybe is a good thing, because everything is just going to be take longer and be more. The perimeter will be even more secure than it would have been otherwise.
Well, I would say, like, even last night you could feel the ramped up security. Like, that's just part of the Super Bowl, but given what happened on New Year's here, like, officials have stressed the high insecurity, and I've been actually really impressed by just the amount of people be like, all right, it's this way. Like, they're super helpful.
They are.
A lot. It makes me think of, Rod, were you with us in Los Angeles when we went to the Rams game last year, and just like,
nobody knew
security
knew. Yeah, I was there.
Where we were supposed to go, and that stadium's huge, and man, super helpful listening. So shout out to the security people.
The most impressive thing for me was last night seeing the media room just constructed right in the middle of a garage, like in the parking garage.
And if you didn't know, if you weren't familiar with the Super Bowl, you might not even be able to tell it was a parking garage. It was like carpeted, and if you really paid attention, you could see the beams.
Yeah,
and
I was
some
sweating
of the
too much
signs
for that to be like a normal.
Yeah, and it got warm in there, and but it was. I thought it was pretty well done, and they had lots of signage and lots of people telling you where to go, and you could get in and out fairly easily. So we'll see. And obviously, like, the New Orleans Super Bowl host committee, their motto this year is, "This is what we do." I mean, they know what they're doing. They've got people who have, even though it's been 12 years, they've done this before. I am curious to see, Matt, you and I were talking about this last week. new stadiums tend to get a Super Bowl.
No.
Dallas did it. The Giants and Jets Stadium did it. The Vikings did it. I mean, like, doesn't matter where in the country. Detroit, new stadiums tend to get a Super Bowl. There are some exceptions. I don't think Seattle ever got one when they built their new stadium. So there are some exceptions to that rule. But the Commanders are talking about a new stadium. The Bears are talking about a new stadium. The Bills, that might be one of the exceptions.
Yeah, if it's not dome, which I think they were famously like, no, we want the outdoor air still.
Right.
So.
Right. You're not getting a Super Bowl.
Nashville's another one. Tennessee.
But what that does is when the NFL awards these Super Bowls to new stadiums, you wind up having a bigger gap in the traditional Super Bowl sites. Miami they had the Super Bowl, it was the first Chiefs Super Bowl in 2019 against the 49ers, I think was in Miami. But they haven't had one in a while. New Orleans has been 12 years. Atlanta hasn't had one in a while. They're 3 years away. So the question is, when's the next time it's coming to New Orleans? You start looking at all these new stadiums coming down the pipe, and it may be a while again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's on New Orleans' side right now is those stadiums I don't think have even struck dirt yet.
No,
maybe.
But unless you're coming back in the next 5 years, which 3 years are already, you got San Francisco, LA again, and then Atlanta in 3 years. Those are the only three that have been announced. I would imagine Dallas gets another one at some point.
Maybe Vegas.
Maybe Vegas gets Tampa, which Tampa's last one was the COVID season, so they might want like a real Super Bowl with a real crowd. It might be a few years anyway, and at that point, then does Nashville get one? Does Chicago get one? Does Washington get one?
Right.
It may be a while again.
And I think because this 12-year gap is the longest gap has ever been for New Orleans. So
and before that, it was an 11-year gap, which was the longest.
Right.
It used to just be a rotation almost between Miami, New Orleans, Southern California, and then kind of Tampa and Atlanta got into it a little bit, but
Arizona.
And Arizona got into it later. Yeah.
The other thing too is that it was supposed to be an 11-year gap, right? But then they moved it back to Mardi Gras. So
another complicating. You need a year when Mardi Gras is somewhat late, like it was this year, or else you're gonna. They've adjusted some of the carnival schedule for this year as it is.
Yeah.
But if Mardi Gras is even a week earlier, then it's really going to be a disruption.
I cannot imagine
it was actually a 17 game. It was a 17 game schedule that threw it off.
Right.
Because
they had to push everything back a week, and then last year Mardi Gras was early.
18 games now.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they would start sooner, maybe.
I think at that point you start sooner, right?
Yeah, at some point.
Otherwise, you're playing the regular season into like mid-January,
right?
Which I guess you could do. But you'd have to adjust the combine then, and everything would. I would think you'd just go a week earlier.
Yeah.
At that point, start Labor Day weekend.
Which is what I think the colleges need to do too, because they have I think it's 2027 maybe, or maybe even 2026. Like the national championship game is like the last week in January. Like it's like
January 20th.
Yeah, like I just think I think they're getting too. I think people are kind of tired by the end of college. You kind of want to.
And the gap is too long too. It feels like.
Yeah, I mean the game between the playoff, and it's just.
No, I agree. The TV ratings were real low for this year's championship game. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're on Radio Row here at Super Bowl 59, hanging out with you. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We're waiting on Blake Grupe to come back over, Saints kicker. Hopefully we'll have him here in a few minutes right after these messages.
Hey y'all, I'm Robin Barnes, the New Orleans Songbird, and we are here for the making of Super Bowl 59 at the beautiful Superdome. This will be the 11th Super Bowl in New Orleans. New Orleans is known for its vibrant culture, rich history, and amazing music, if I do say so myself. In this series, we're going to show you how the Super Bowl comes to life. This episode is all about the Super Bowl 59 Ambassador Program, presented by Chevron. Ambassadors are the volunteers who are responsible for the welcoming of hundreds of thousands of fans and visitors to New Orleans during Super Bowl week. First, we'll talk to Craig Forshag, Director of Sales for the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation and Super Bowl 59 Host Committee, about what makes this Ambassador Program unique. Then, Leah Brown, Public Affairs Manager of Chevron's Gulf of Mexico Business Unit, tells us about their partnership on this program. Let's get started.
At Auctioner, we know healing is a team sport. That's why we've partnered with world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews to create the Auctioner Andrews Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute. Whether you're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, our team of specialists are dedicated to getting you back in the game. So whatever your reasons are for reaching your personal best, we've only got one. You. Ochsner Andrews Institute. Long live you.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Podcast, live from Radio Row at Super Bowl 59 at the New Orleans Convention Center. Going to play a few videos from last night's opening night media day for you here. Got a chance to ask Eagles coach Nick Sirianni about Kellen Moore. Obviously, Kellen can't come to any sort of an agreement with the Saints, but if he does, the way I framed the question was, if and when he does become a head coach, why will Kellen Moore make a good head coach? And here's what Nick Sirianni said.
Kellen is a great leader, great communicator, tireless worker, great person. He's got a lot of great qualities about him that, he'll be fantastic. He's been fantastic as their offensive coordinator, and, you go from an offensive coordinator leading the entire offense to the entire team, but you're still in charge of 30 guys there on the offensive side, so it's a good preview of the type of head coach you'll be. And I just think, I can't say enough good things about his football knowledge, his calmness in intense situations. He's just got a lot of great leadership qualities that now I'm hoping I get to keep him. But we'll see as this plays itself out.
All right, so interesting answer there, I think, from Nick Sirianni, saying how organized Kellen Moore is. He does think he's a good leader. Kind of to your point, Matt, there are different styles. Jeff wouldn't like the answer, but you don't have to be the pound the table, Bill Parcells style alpha leader. Are there any other Jeff cliches I can fit in there?
Sean Payton.
Yeah. Leader of men. Yeah, that's a good one.
Buy my book.
Come on. Okay. Later walked over to where Dallas Goedert was having his press conference, and Jameis Winston was all over the place last night. Pretty good move by Fox, I got to say, to get the guy kind of it's not 15 minutes of fame because he's been around longer than that, but I think in some ways America is just realizing how what a goofball Jameis is. And as I mentioned earlier, he had W cookies he was throwing to the guys and saying, hey, eat a W. But here is Dallas Goedert actually doing here's Jameis telling him how to do the cha-cha slide as a Super Bowl touchdown celebration, and then telling him to eat a W, and you actually see Goedert actually doing it with his hand.
In the South, we go to family reunions, right? And we turn on this song called the Cha-Cha Slide. Have you ever heard of the Cha-Cha Slide? The Cha-Cha Slide. Okay, so I know you're going to get in the end zone, right? So all I want you to do is slide to the left, slide to the right, crisscross, and eat a W. Eat a W. When you score. Eat that W. Yes, please eat that W. Man, listen. Big stage, bro. You've been here before. Everybody talk about Kelsey, but I know that your matchup with James Cook, Josh Cook, is going to be one of the toughest matchups out there, because I believe my tight ends get open as the best matchup on the field. But we all here to know. We want to know this, bro. What's your favorite color? Oh, my favorite color is blue.
Are we still off camera, guys? Oh, I don't see myself, but yeah, Jameis was asking everybody about his favorite color, and Goddard said blue. If you couldn't hear that at the end of that video, it kind of cut off. But yeah, he's got a future in media, I think.
I actually saw him when he first got to the media room, and I went up and shook his hand, and he's like, "Roger, you got any pointers for me?" And I was like, "Man, just be Jameis." I mean, that's what he needs to do. He doesn't need pointers. He needs to just be who he is, and I think that's kind of what made him so likable.
He was asking everybody which team he should play for next year, and I know Saquon Barkley said, and Goddard said the same thing, that, hey, go play for the Giants. And he asked Goddard. Well, first of all, Goddard said, you should come hang out with us in Philly, and Jameis said, I want to play, man. And so he said, well, then go to New York. If I go to New York, are you going to let me beat you? And Goddard says, maybe we could talk about a split. So it was a pretty funny moment. But then I did also ask Dallas Goedert about Kellen Moore. Beginning in this clip, he's actually cleaning up the crumbs from the W cookie. So it takes a second. But here's Dallas Goedert on camera.
Yeah, we've only had Kellen for this year. He's done a great job stepping in, leading the offense. He's got full command of the room when he's in zone plays, when he's talking. And I think that's important. When you can control a room the way he does, I think that just puts you in a good spot to be a head coach.
Video here. I thought this one was pretty good, actually. Eagles offensive tackle Lane Johnson talking about what he liked about Kellen Moore.
Football mind. I think what he's done as a player was remarkable. He's at Boise State when he was in the NFL. But I've watched him, obviously, what he's done with my team. I've watched him from afar, when he was in Dallas, and the impact he had on that development. So I think he's unbelievable. I think he's a football genius, and his best days are in front of him, too.
Lane. Okay, so that is Eagles offensive tackle Lane Johnson talking about Kellen Moore. And again, we talked about this, Matt, like pretty effusive praise. I don't know what you expected these guys to say. Right. They could have been more lukewarm, though, and they weren't.
Yeah, it was I talked to Jahan Dotson, who, if you want to ring the bell, used to play for the Commanders, but I plays for the Eagles. And I was interested in his perspective because he's the third wide receiver in a run-first offense. And so he doesn't really ever get the ball. His best game of the season was when A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith were sitting in Week 18. But he had nothing but praise to say about Kellen Moore, that he really sees the game well, adapted to his personnel. I asked him about making it a run-first offense when he had historically been kind of a pass-happy coordinator, and he's like, well, you have Saquon. It takes care of itself.
Yeah.
But said he was really sees the game well, can really find those details, and he said it was the most fun he's having this year. So he's played for he's had a rough go of it throughout his career.
And I mean, I think that says a lot that a guy who didn't get the ball much this year said, I mean, to your point, this guy's the goods. I don't know. I fighting recency bias here, but I'm more sold on Kellen Moore than I was a week ago.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought it was kind of an interesting option, given it was really what he showed early in Dallas that I think is really intriguing because, if he's hired by the Saints, Alvin Kamara is a great running back, but you can't use him like Saquon Barkley. He would wear out, and he has another skill set that you would really want to tap into. I actually think, I mean, this is just me assuming, but I think their offense would maybe look something more closer to what he tried to run in Dallas than it would with what he's doing in Philly. But it just depends on what type of player he has and who's the quarterback's going to be.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the criticism of Kellen Moore early in his coaching career in Dallas was that he was just trying to run fast-paced offense, throw the ball all the time. You're not going to criticize an offensive coordinator for scoring points. Right. But the problem with that is, as anybody who watches football knows, you try to go fast and score points like that. When it doesn't work, you go 3 and out in 11 seconds and you put the defense right back on the field. Even when you score fast, sometimes your defense can get worn out. There has to be a give and take there. And again, he's got Saquon Barkley now, but it does seem like Kellen Moore has sort of learned other ways to do things.
Yeah, and I actually think that's another credit to him because he's worked with some very different styles of coaches. I mean, he started with Jason Garrett and Jason Garrett's last year, guy he knew well because Garrett had coached him as a player. Then Mike McCarthy comes in, and Mike McCarthy has his own offensive background, his own ideas of what the offense should look like. And even though Moore was retained, you've got to kind of blend the coaching philosophies. And then Brandon Staley, Nick Sirianni, guys who have their own thoughts on the offense. Brandon Staley's a defensive guy, but he still has ideas of how his offense should look. So as a coordinator, you've got to basically be beholden to the head coach. And I think Moore has navigated those situations well.
Yeah. Okay, we are going to take a quick 30-second break. Blake Grupe is here, and we're going to get him settled in and be back to talk to the Saints kicker right after this.
In this series, we're going to show you how the Super Bowl comes to life. This time, we're talking all things Superdome. First, we'll chat with Steve Farrago, NFL Director of Event Operation, about how he and his team start work way ahead of time to make sure the Dome is game day ready on Super Bowl Sunday. Then, Evan Holmes, the GM of the Superdome, talks Dome renovations and takes me on the coolest escalator ride of my life. So, stay tuned in.
Welcome back to Radio Row, live from Super Bowl 59. Zach Ewing and Matthew Paris here, hanging out with Saints kicker Blake Grupe. Blake, thanks for being here, man.
Thank you guys for having me.
I know you're playing the waiting game like the rest of us on this coaching search thing. No agreement yet, but have you been watching some Kellen Moore's offenses and seeing what he's all about, interviews, things like that?
I don't need to know the offense, man. I just need to keep kicking. But yeah, I'm sure a decision will be made soon. I've just continued I'm starting to ramp up and get ready to play this year and taking care of my business. I know they'll take care of it whenever their time be. But me personally, I'm just ready to give another chance and go into year 3.
I would think the waiting game is the hardest part here.
Yeah.
Just mentally not knowing who the coach is, what the situation is. Obviously, you guys had Riz at the end of the year, not knowing if he's going to be back. What has that been like, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. When people ask me who I think it's going to be, or what I know, I always tell them check Twitter, because if you want to know what I know, check Twitter. Riz, I feel like came in and did a really good job. I'm a believer in Riz. At the end of the day, it's out of my hands, it's out of his hands. We'll see what happens. So I believe whoever comes in, sure will make changes in their own way, and I think the guys will be open to it and be ready to work.
What do you kind of make of the way that Riz has been? Seems like a lot of teams are waiting to see what happens with the Saints because of Rizzy. Like if Rizzy doesn't get the job, then they want him to be his special coordinator. What do you kind of make of that?
For sure. Riz is highly respected in the special teams world and across the league, not just in special teams. He helped with the kickoff rule last year. I don't even know what year he's on, but he's coached a lot of ball. He's a top tier special teams coordinator, and super thankful to even have, even if it is just 2 years or whatever it may be with him. He made me better as a player, and so whatever may come, he's definitely not going to be out of a job next year. So I hope he stays here, and Riz is my guy, Phil Galliano is my guy. They both can do a damn good job, and so I'm hoping whatever may happen, that I have some sort of familiarity with the special teams room, but it's out of my control, and I'm just ready to prove myself again.
Yeah, how much of that familiarity kind of helps your game? Like, you look at the growth you had this year. Like, how much does familiarity contribute to that?
Yeah, I would have to say a lot. You have your routines, and the way we've practiced these last 2 years is obviously helped and allowed me to improve, and so. But also, you never know, what can change, what could be better, and so you have to be open. But I love the way we run things on special teams. We make a lot of plays. We have some guys, we have some dudes on special teams that are down there making tackles, whether it's JT Gray, Anthony Orgy, Willie Gay, Howden. We have guys all across the board that are good special teams players, and I think that's a direct result of Darren Rizzi and Phil Galliano.
As a kicker who's still young, going into your 3rd year in the league, how do you prepare in an off season? I don't assume you want to over prepare, but you still probably are at that stage in your career where you do feel like you have to go prove yourself and earn that job.
100%. Regardless of what year you're in, whether it's year 3, whether it's year 10, you're trying to prove yourself, and you're competing against yourself at the end of the day every single time you go out there. And so there are little things that I feel like I can still continue to improve on and work on, and strengthen up the body, and really just giving yourself the best chance to go out with whatever challenges and stuff you may face from year to year. Kind of got to reinvent yourself and just be ready to go to work and compete.
Statistically, had a pretty big improvement from year 1 to year 2. How do you grade this past season for yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy with it. I don't know if I can give it a direct grade or anything, but if you look at my 4 misses, I think we're 27 for 31. So you look at your 4 misses. I'd give 2 of them. Probably I'd chalk them up as something mental going into the kick. I've always said that if I work through my routine and when I work through my routine and I put myself in the right place mentally before a field goal or a kick, something good is going to happen. And so I chalk 2 of them up as maybe mental errors going to work into it, and then you go into MetLife, who I might have to look at the real statistics, but it might be the hardest place to kick in the league.
Wins are just
it's circling. It was December in New York and New Jersey, wherever the heck that place is at, and you get dealt a 53-yarder and a 60-yarder, and so obviously the degree of difficulty was big that day, and I led a 53. I couldn't stop it from going right to left, and the 60 got blocked, and so I look at my group of work this year. I am proud of it, and I think it was a direct result of some of the stuff I was able to put in and work on this offseason and be around other guys across the league, and I try to get out there and just learn, and I feel like there's some knowledge in that and some power, and I think that carried over this year.
The mental approach that you talk about, do you work with a sports psychologist, or is that more of an internal thing you do? How do you prepare?
Yeah, so I would call it internal now for the most part. Thankfully, in college, I've had a couple of strength coaches that were actually really big into sports psych, and so I think early in my college career, I got exposed to it, and so those kind of lessons I learned then, I still kind of apply now. But there's obviously always something to learn, and over in San Diego, we were at this past off season that we had don't remember his name, but he was a sports psych guy, majority with golfers. And basically what we talked through was just that pre-shot, but that pre-kick routine and everything that we can work through and maybe how to deal with certain things. And so there's always somebody out there, and I'm sure that there'll be improvements to make in that department, and that but for me personally, I kind of take it on as more internally, just because I feel like I've had a lot of good coaching and I can fall back on those same guys that have helped me in the past.
There are so many analogies for punters and kickers with golf. Are you a golf guy? Is that?
I am. Yeah, we got 2 tournaments later on this week. Okay. The Steve Gleason, they're having a charity golf tournament for him out at the Bayou Oaks City Park on Thursday, and then out at TPC Louisiana on Friday we got the Bayou, or no, that one's the Front Office Sports. So that one can be pretty neat. Excited for both of them. I think on Thursday at the Gleason one, I think Sean Payton's coming back. I think Lutz is coming back. I think Morstead's coming back. I think Hartley's coming back. So it's like a big special teams reunion. But a lot of different guys are going to be at that tournament, and obviously it's a great event, and that's a great foundation with everything that they're able to do.
What's the handicap?
We're sitting at probably I think it's 12-4 last time, which might be a little low. It might need, for where I'm at right now, I need to bump it up a little bit, but. I played first time 2 weeks ago out at City Park, shot at 83, but then went, 2 days later at a new course, shot at 91. So, you never know. That's golf, I guess.
Yeah. Is your reaction to a miss in golf kind of the same as when you miss a kick?
No, hell, I got to put myself in enough stressful situations when it comes to kicking. So I try not to hold myself too high to the standard. But don't be wrong, I'm trying to go out there and freaking shoot par. So we'll see. There's a lot more improvements in the golf game to be made right now, I guess I'll say.
Those improvements can come faster.
They can.
Another hobby of yours, I think, or maybe this is more of a bit that people ascribe to you, so you'll have to clarify, but you're a watch guy, right?
A little bit. Okay. I mean, yeah.
So this is more of a bit then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What you got? What'd you hear?
Well, did someone give you like a very nice watch, or is that?
Yeah, I actually this will be the first time I've talked about that. So you guys are getting some good stuff here.
Are you wearing a watch? I don't think you are.
No, dude, you can see it. I don't know if you see the band. I forgot to put it on this morning, so terrible timing. You guys asked about it. But yeah, funny enough, out in when we were out in Irvine for training camp this year, I was getting body work and find a massage guy out there with Dan, and so he had a business partner basically. They own a bunch of gyms out there and PT clinics. And his wife was a huge Saints fan, just happened to be. And so we can invite people to practice. And so I invited them out to practice, probably midway through camp. And she just absolutely loved it. They have a little man. He was out there. I think he was playing catch with tire end. That's an awesome deal. I remember being that kid when I was young. So I invited him back a second time. And they told me before they invited him, I invited him out there before they showed up, whatever that last practice was. They're like, we got a little gift for you, for taking care of us. And what I know now is that he's a watch dealer. He's like a high-end watch dealer. And then also what I know now is that they rolled up in his and hers Lamborghinis to practice. And so I was inviting them just because they were buddies of the guy I know and had no idea about any of this. So we're out there one of our last special teams for periods. Practice is over, and they're like, hey, go over there, say hi to him, say hi to the little man. And he's like, I got a gift for you. And he opens up his bag and pulls out a green Rolex box. And I was like, no way, right? And so here I am walking off practice, helmet, shoulder pads, sweaty Irvine, California, cleats on, one hand, helmet, and all that. On the other hand, a freaking Rolex box. And I just walked into the equipment room and I said, guys, I don't know how to exactly explain or tell you guys what happened, but I just got gifted this and just like went like, and they were all just like it's spread. You know, Mickey came to me. Yeah, that was a funny day because everybody was like, dude, no, like what? In the, like nobody does that. But yeah, Justin's a great guy. He went to the Chargers game. He came to the Raiders game here. Obviously, anything that guy wants from me, he's got it. But yeah, awesome. I literally told myself to put it on. It's sitting right on my my little bedside table where I was about to put it on today. I'll also be able to show you. But yeah, he gave me a Rolex. It's a great watch. Black face, got a little gold in there. So he said it fits the Saints well.
Well, it's funny to see the reaction of players because, like, you know, they each had their own collecting hobbies, but they were very impressed by that watch.
Yeah,
so.
obviously, most guys are buying those type of things.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, Zach Wood, who's going on, year 9 or 10, he was like, man, I've been playing here for 9 or 10 years, and I ain't got even anything, maybe even a hat from somebody. And so that was a pretty funny deal. I always tell Zach, go talk to people, man. You got to smile more, go out and talk to people. You couldn't pay him enough money to come here today and talk and do all this kind of stuff. But that's just Zach. And so he's been great as well. He's playing on that tournament as well on Thursday.
Did you like going away for camp?
I did and didn't. It was windy out there, like very windy, and I hated it. But I will say, late into the year, when we went to Green Bay, and I know I talked about it here, but went into MedLife, I had a great warm-up. You know, learning in Irvine and dealing with some of those wind conditions, I actually learned that from different guys, you know, how different leans with the wind and everything can actually help you and keep the ball a little straighter for a little longer with those winds. And so, yeah, at the time, the weather was nice. It was 70, you know, maybe 75 degrees on a hot day. So that was great, but boy, it was windy. But I will say that made me better. And going into the year and last couple of years, like last game in Tampa, there was a pretty good little win there. And I didn't flinch at all because I kind of fell back to what we'd learned in Irvine and how I practiced that week with different stuff and went 4 for 4 and finished the year strong. So, you know, everything happens for a reason and it did make me better. But I would like to stay around here. It just makes everything a little easier. But, you know, we're ready to go wherever, you know, wherever we get told to go, we go and get ready to go.
Long snappers are people too. Zach, if you want to stop by, we'll be friendly. All right.
Give them a call.
Blake, is this your first time in like a Radio Row environment?
It is. I was in here yesterday. But yeah, this is my first time doing anything. Super Bowls don't come around Sedalia, Missouri.
Sure.
Much.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got all kinds of stuff. We're bouncing around. We got Sirius XM later. We're just making the rounds today, and you know, just chatting, you know, telling some stories, just hanging out.
What's your favorite Missouri State Fair story? You got to have some in Sedalia. I went to Mizzou.
I was say, say, how do you know that the Missouri State Fair is in Sedalia? So State Fair, when you're in high school, the you know, up and down the strip with all the rides, that's where it's at. You know,
that's the strip of Sedalia, Missouri.
Yeah. In 2 weeks in August, there's all the carnies come in, and there's all kinds of stuff. I remember going to my grandma when we were young. But yeah, I think when I think of the fair, I think of running around in high school with all my buddies and chasing and having fun, riding rides. It's a good time.
Okay, we talked Super Bowl. Y'all played both the Eagles and the Chiefs this year. Yeah. Lost a close game to the Eagles. Not as close of a game in Kansas City, but you did get to see both teams up close. So break down this matchup. Give us a pick here.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a good game to watch. And wish I was going to the game, honestly. But I have to watch that on TV. Going to have a good little seat on the couch. But being a Missouri guy, it's hard not to go to Kansas City. My dad is definitely going for Kansas City.
Sedalia's like an hour?
Yeah, we're right there. Philly's been running the ball great. I mean, they're two good teams. I actually talked to Harrison Bucker earlier this week. He was getting a breakdown on the dome turf and how the ball flies in there. So yeah, I guess I'll have to lean towards Kansas City guys with my Missouri roots. But it's gonna be a great game, and I'm excited to see. I'm excited to watch it.
What has it been like to see the Chiefs? You know, did you grow up as a Chiefs fan, or?
Yeah, unfortunately.
But they were not nearly as good, obviously. What has it been like to see them?
I remember the days of Trent Green and early Alex Smith, Tyler Thigpen. I mean, everybody. We were big fans then, and now I almost despise them not being in the NFL. But I guess that's just how it goes.
As soon as they got good, you were.
Yeah, now I got to play against them, right? So yeah, I mean, I have people that I know in the organization, and it was really neat playing in Arrowhead this year. But yeah, they're obviously operating at a very high level and you know, up and down the line. So
You're too young for the Pete Stoyanovich game, right?
I think so. Actually, my first Chiefs game was like the game that Trent Green got like laid out by somebody. And I got some good little Chiefs stories. We went to, obviously, as a kid, went on the field. Larry Johnson gave me his gloves. And then me and my dad actually went to a game against Cincinnati, last game of the year. Anyways, my dad was talking smoke to Chad Johnson. At the end, basically telling Chad he wasn't going to do anything in that game. And he was telling my dad, I got something for you. I'm going to show you. And he didn't score, didn't do nothing that game, but ended up giving us his helmet. So we got in our basement, we got a signed Ocho Cinco helmet. Still got red paint all over it and everything. So wild deal there. I used to wear it when I was a kid, but he's got a tiny old little head. So I'm sure one day, I have to get my hands on that one. But that's a really cool story. And I remember my dad, we came home and people were trying to buy it off of us. It was a crazy deal. Crazy deal.
That's awesome. That's all. I'd be remiss before we let you go if we didn't ask you about Notre Dame season and how the Irish did this year.
Yeah, that was awesome to watch. Thankfully, I was able to make the Sugar Bowl when it was here. With everything rescheduled, I was only able to make the second half. But yeah, Derek Carr gave us a suite, which was really nice of him. Pete Warner and his whole family, or his fiance's family, are all Notre Dame fans. What I didn't know is actually Pete was committed to Notre Dame for a little bit. I didn't know that, but that was awesome to watch. We were in the suite for the game. It was awesome to watch that environment, in my city. But then to see him, just the whole 12-team playoff was really cool, and it was awesome to see him win. And obviously, wish they would have got the Natty, but Ohio State was a really good team, and I think with Freeman, they're going to be back soon.
Did you have any bets on the line with Pete or the other Ohio State guys?
No.
Or did you know better?
No, I knew, but maybe in last year we played them, and that was the whole 10-man.
Right at the goal line. Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah. So I talked my fair share of smack last year, and so going into this year, I let them be. I've always found that if I'm talking smack, then we end up losing. So I told them, I hope you guys have a great game. I hope we win, because that's what I was doing every step of the way with Indiana, Georgia. I was like, I just want them to go out there and have a good time, because then it's winning. But if I start talking, we always seem to lose. So
it worked every step of the way until the last.
That's right. I know. Maybe I should have.
Blake, we appreciate you stopping by. Have a good offseason, man, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks. All right. He's Blake Grupe, Saints kicker, and we're going to take a quick break and wrap things up here live from Radio Row on the Saints.
In this series, we're going to show you how the Super Bowl comes to life. This time, we're talking all things Superdome. First, we'll chat with Steve Farrago, NFL Director of Event Operation, about how he and his team start work way ahead of time to make sure the Dome is game day ready on Super Bowl Sunday. Then, Evan Holmes, the GM of the Superdome, talks Dome renovations and takes me on the coolest escalator ride of my life. So, stay tuned in. Hey y'all, I'm Robin Barnes, the New Orleans Songbird, and we are here for the making of Super Bowl 59 at the beautiful Superdome. This will be the 11th Super Bowl in New Orleans. New Orleans is known for its vibrant culture, rich history, and amazing music, if I do say so myself. In this series, we're going to show you how the Super Bowl comes to life. This episode is all about the Super Bowl 59 Ambassador Program, presented by Chevron. Ambassadors are the volunteers who are responsible for the welcoming of hundreds of thousands of fans and visitors to New Orleans during Super Bowl week. First, we'll talk to Craig Forshag, Director of Sales for the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation and Super Bowl 59 Host Committee, about what makes this ambassador program unique. Then, Leah Brown, Public Affairs Manager of Chevron's Gulf of Mexico Business Unit, tells us about their partnership on this program. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Radio Row here, the Saints Insider live from the New Orleans Convention Center for Super Bowl 59. I'm Zach Ewing. Had a good show today, all by my lonesome now, but I want to thank Brooks Kubina, the Eagles beat writer for The Athletic, Luke Johnson and Matthew Paris, our Saints beat writers for the Times-Picayune, also Rod Walker, our columnist, and then finally, of course, Saints kicker Blake Grupe for stopping by. Going to let you know what our schedule is like the rest of the week. You heard Blake mention Thomas Morstead, the former Saints punter, now with the Jets, but still has a lot of ties, still has a house in New Orleans, still is very involved with Steve Gleason's charity, and Thomas Morstead is going to be on the show tomorrow. So looking forward to that. And then a huge set of guests lined up for Thursday, including Deuce McAllister, Drew Brees, Packers running back Josh Jacobs, all those guys coming on the show on Thursday. And you never know who's going to stop by here on Radio Row either. So it's going to be a good time. We appreciate you all hanging out with us. And Jim Derry's Datitude podcast comes up later today. I know he's going to have Mike Detillier on. I can't remember who all he said. Adam Chernoff, who is a sports betting expert, will be on his podcast. And he's got somebody else on. I'm blanking on who it is, but I'm sure Jim will tell you. He's going to get going live at about 1 o'clock. So we're here live all week. Going to start a little bit earlier tomorrow. We've been 10 a.m. the last 2 days, probably more like 9:30 tomorrow morning. And then even earlier Thursday and Friday, which will be the real busy days, might go a full 3 hours from 9 to 12. I do want to let you know that we're sponsored by Ochsner Health. They are the official healthcare provider of the New Orleans Super Bowl host committee. So our thanks to Ochsner, also all of our guests for stopping by. Norman Bell and Robert Young were on the production team today, so our thanks to them, and as well to our guests, and especially to you for stopping by. So we'll see you tomorrow here on Radio Row. This has been the Saints Insider Podcast, and we'll see you later.